Hello, welcome to the 131st episode of my podcast, Currency. This is Currency. Welcome to Currency. I wish I was cooler than I am, but I'm cool enough that I have released a couple of verses online, a couple raps that I did, that I wrote out as tweets, each one of them their own tweet. And I figure since I have this platform, I'll start off this episode by performing one of them for you. Since if you follow me on Twitter, follow me at Steele Connor, STEALCONNER. That's capital STEAL, capital CONNER. Then you would be able to see these verses right when they come out so you can read it. So I put out this tweet that was just a rap that I did. It's like lyrics of a verse. And then I put at the end, comment your own to keep the flow going. So that, and then I tagged a bunch of rappers just in case one of them wanted to add on their own rap to what I started, just so we can start the trend of battle rapping on Twitter. And then in my most recent tweet, I tagged somebody who sent me negative feedback on one of my replies, somebody that I am designating as a hater, and I tagged him in my most recent rap so I could start a battle rap with him. He hasn't replied yet. It's only been like 12 hours. I don't think he will. He has more followers than I do, so he might not have necessarily seen it. Like maybe he gets tagged in enough things, but Lil Wayne still hasn't commented a rap back at me either. But nobody has. Let's see how many people saw this first one I did. This first one has been seen by 47 people, but a number of those are just me going back to the page to see how many people viewed it. Because I was anticipating like, oh, this will be a phenomenon, when I put it out, but I still hasn't got any replies. But anyway, since I have this extra platform, I decided I'll perform it for you anyway. Yeah. Alright, this is the one right here. I sped it up a little. Hashtag 9. Y'all is feeling this shit? Yeah. Here it comes. Hashtag 9. Feel it in my spine. Doing lines on the free throw line. Getting mine. My business to mine. I'ma mind that bird. Bird is the word. Doing just fine killers. Where my killers at? Lickety splat, it's spitting them facts. The class is in session on gas, fresh in the glass. When I'm pouring simply Florida oranges. Feel it in my spleen like a spiked protein. Cooper DeJean and Lois Lane sipping lean. Way that humans being. Being real, I be rearing some Bereans like a European, yeah. Piece of grease and feed the geese. Cause I got 50 on, you can't outgrip me, dog. And I'm riffing it, living it, primitive or indigenous. Decisions, blissful indifference. Wishing the mission is survival of the fittest witness. Alrighty. That was one time through, and I'm not going to do it again. Actually, that was my second time, but the first time I cut out because the beat was too slow. And, fuck it, that was good enough. I hadn't practiced it, but hope you loved it. I'll perform the other one better next whenever I do that one. And then hopefully I'll write more of these verses, but nobody liked either one of them. And when I put out the first one, I went from 105 followers to 102 followers. Like, I lost 3 people when I put it out. I mean, I don't really know what the people are looking for. I guess they're, I don't know why that happens. Maybe those people were already going to leave no matter what. But I just picture they're like, oh, a freestyle rap? I'm fucking out of here. I don't get that, how somebody makes that choice. Because what content are they looking for? They want people to make shitty political takes only? Or just like, hey, I come on here to hear people talk about Joe Biden and that he's old and that he has dementia or whatever. It's like, nobody really takes the time to care about what you're trying to do. I think that they're just like, oh, is this guy being an idiot? And then they're out of there. But it's really just that. And you only ever get to have a positive attitude about these things. Like somebody, you don't have to comment your own rap. I understand that nobody commented their own rap because I guess that's a lot. And my rap would probably be better than theirs. So they're like not going to put something that's worse. I get that it's difficult for them, but you know, you could drop a like or just say fire or bars or, you know, any one of those because it's like, you know, any one of the things that you could say. There's so many things that you could comment for everybody to look at it and comment nothing. Out of all of the millions of things you could say this sucks, whatever. Like, all of those millions of things, everybody's like, oh, I'll pass. Because, and I'm saying, I don't really get that. I don't understand. Nobody wants to like just say, oh, like it's not like the world's gonna end. Is Cooper DeJean and Lois Lane sipping lean? Like, where else are you gonna find this information? This is basically the news at this point. This is like, oh, we can't find any good. What's a good source for news? Everything's fake now. We can't tell what is the news like. And then I'm saying shit like that. Pouring Simply Florida oranges. I'd be rearing some Bereans like a European. And if people want to get their facts elsewhere, it's fucking crazy. Where else are you going to get this shit? But, you know, not for everyone. I should just carry that poster around with me everywhere. Not for everyone. This guy should just tattoo it on my forehead. Just get this over with. Just be done with it. Look, not for everyone, apparently. But I'm saying, like, what I'm trying to... I just end up talking about Christian things on the podcast. As I... Like, it used to be more fun before I realized that I'm so institutionalized to the Christian church. That's what this podcast has been for me, an experience of me realizing, unfortunately, slowly more over time, that I have been institutionalized to the Christian church based on how many years I spent there, and that those are most of my most valuable relationships with the Christian people that I am now vehemently against. But some people shouldn't be on the drug of Christianity. I'd say that I'm one of those people because it caused me to do crazy things. But it's whatever. I guess it's too late at this point. So maybe if I changed the title and did this podcast differently, then I wouldn't end up talking about Christianity, and that Christianity is so much about relevance, and that it's just kind of like... But, yeah, you gotta have a positive attitude, like, they dislike it, so who cares? Or it's like, no, I wasn't doing it for the likes or whatever. Because it's always the most integrated behavior, like moralistic behavior, gets rewarded. And the climate became really Christian in the last few years because everybody's talking about how bad alcohol is for you. This time around, people are just saying, oh, it's really unhealthy, which is true. But that's just the way of telling people that they're sinners for doing it, for drinking alcohol. And people, religious types, get angry at weed, where it's like, we were on this trajectory where everybody was starting to be like, oh, weed is great for everyone, or mushrooms or whatever, drugs are good. But then we turned back really Christian all of a sudden. But the world will always keep reverting back to Christianity as long as we're all defined by history and we're all living within Christ's timeline. It's just like literalism captures us in this closed off bubble where you can't, the cap is Jesus Christ. You can't go above that because it's all contained by him according to the world, according to all the countries in the world that live off of the years system that is most popular. Because people don't, not every country in the world goes off of like, it's 2024, some of them have different year systems that aren't dependent on Jesus, but everybody else, most popularly, it's dependent on Jesus, and it's really just about the popularity of the timeline. There's alternative timelines, but we all live in a centralized singular timeline. It's defined by and dependent on Jesus. And that makes for a closed off bubble where it's like there's no cap, but when people want to break free from that, they're being fake, they're not being real, because realistically it's defined by Jesus. Realistically, the Bible, it's defined by Jews and Christians, the story of the world. Realistically, it's a story, and it's defined by Jews and Christians. But you see that that's true based on that America, the most culturally influential country in the world, is very pro-Christian and pro-Israel. It's because they have no other choice, because they want to be as real as it gets. But, I mean, they're the leaders of the narration of the world. They're the most influential, like, pop cultural, but they're the most popular nation. They have the most popular currency and language, and they hold to the most popular religions. They do things for, I mean, they're just on the cutting edge or whatever, America. And it's really like Jews are, you know, and you know, I don't really like Israel. The thing is that I'm also German, and one of the highest countries that listens to my podcasts, the views that I get is from Germany, probably because I am German. I have those natural anti-Jewish sentiments within me. It's only because I'm German, you know. But like, look, so it's like you can't. I'm German, you know. That should allow me to get away with that. It's like, oh wait, he's German, so of course he doesn't like the Jews. But the reason I don't like the Jews is because they circumcise you when you're a baby, and according to the Bible, like according to the Abrahamic covenant, you're Jew if you got circumcised. It says it right in the Bible. According to the Bible, if you got circumcised, you're a Jew. And there's lots of people that aren't Jews that get circumcised. But, like, circumcision is always this very boring topic for anybody because they don't realize the significance of it. Christians don't even realize the significance of it because they're being gaslit about its significance by leaders in the church. The church, like, literally, Christians think that they think that the Abrahamic covenant is about God giving Israel land and that alone. Or it's like, yeah, the circumcision is part of it, but they'll emphasize like it's God's promise to make Israel a great nation and give them their land back. It's not that. That's just God's side of the bargain. The side of the bargain for humans is getting it's a single action. It's one thing. It's getting circumcised. And it says God decrees in the Bible to Abraham, the Abrahamic covenant, I will give you very many descendants if you do this one thing for me. And that is circumcise your entire household, circumcise all of your kids, all of your descendants into the future. The way that you'll know that they're a Jew, they're one of you. The way that anybody will know that they're a descendant of Abraham is if they're circumcised. And so why are we circumcising people that aren't Jewish? And I'm saying, like, I was circumcised, and I'm a Jew, and I don't have a choice to be one, according to the Bible. You know, no major publications or anything like that, not like the most popular book in the world. But nobody says this. It's like nobody believes that. Nobody would believe that when I'm saying that. They'd be like, yeah, maybe, according to your logic, it is that way. It says it directly in the Bible, and the church lies about it to churchgoers, where they don't say, like, well, The Abrahamic covenant is 100% about you being circumcised. And so if I'm transformed into a Jew within the first couple of days of me being born, this is a shitty fucking world that doesn't care about your beliefs at all. They're like, you're not going to be able to come up with any beliefs that are any good on your own for the course of your life. We'll just take care of it for you day one. We'll make you a Jew. It's already the most recognized like religion by America. Whatever, you'll be good, you'll be set for life. Just see what happens with when people protest Israel. They get tear gassed and rubber bullets just for setting up tents on lawns. Like the deep state, the state will destroy any amount of like anti-Israel protests immediately. It's like because they control the narrative. It's supposed to stay that way. But within a week of me being born, I'm given a first and last name that's in the fashion of Jesus Christ. Hebrew name, Hebrew first name, and I'm circumcised to become a Jew. And I'm saying like the first and last name, that's in the fashion of Jesus Christ, who has a first and last name, so that people can align themselves with the story correctly. It's so that people can fit into the story. That's why we give them this popular format of naming, first and last name, and with a Hebrew name that fits in with the biblical story that the world is run off of. That developing story is year by year within the domain of Jesus, who we celebrate as still being alive for another year, anytime that there's another year, because he's the only person that anybody's convinced anybody else is still alive, and we're counting his years. So people, you're given a first and last name to fit in with the story of Jesus, history, which defines everything, so that when you die, we'll be able to compare you perfectly and subordinately below Jesus, where it's like you died, first and last name. Because we live in the Jesus era, they give you a first and last name to fit in with the Jesus era. Jesus Christ, same as Jesus Christ. And so within a week of me being born, and it's because, so like without me even being able to form any thoughts, like right when I'm born, I'm branded with Jewishness and Christianity, Old Testament and New Testament. And sayonara, you're on your way. You're good to go for life now. It's really like you have good parents if that happens to you. You get a first and last name that formats itself with the world that we're living in, and you get transformed into a Jew, a religion that's untouchable. And if it becomes touchable, then this America and whoever else in the UN will freak the fuck out and make sure that they stomp out any sort of resistance or pro-Palestine, whatever, because that's not according to plan. That's not what the story. And so, like, if you have good parents, you'll be set to go in this world in this lifetime defined by Christians and Jews, and you don't even have a say in it to begin with. Like, and so my point is, don't ever tell me about respecting people's beliefs, because immediately, without me having a say over it at all when I'm a baby, my beliefs are taken away from me and given to Christians and Jews who we already decided have the best beliefs or whatever, and that you're not going to come up with anything better during the course of your life, so we're just going to brand you Christian and Jew immediately. And you might not believe me that it's like if you're circumcised, you're a Jew, but it's exactly what it says in the Bible. You're a Semite. Of course, and why would I ever... Of course I'm going to be anti-Semitic if these gypsy-ass weirdos make me one of them without me ever thinking or saying anything. And then the world is going to tell me, like, you're supposed to respect people's beliefs. This is a world that gives zero fucks about people's beliefs. They hate your beliefs. They only want to give it to the most powerful monopolies in the area of belief to begin with. These are hyper monopolies that siphon off all the belief in the world. Islam and Judaism and Christianity, and they're communism. The monotheistic religions are especially communist. They're just communes. I mean, and you go there and you take communion under to celebrate the death of Jesus. If you're Christian, Jesus is the dictator over the communism that is Christianity. Allah is the dictator over the communism that is Islam, and then God the Father, the God from the Old Testament, is the dictator over the communism of Judaism. But it's like communism already happens on Earth, and it carries out just fine. In Christianity, for example, Christianity is just big communism. It's a big commune. That's what all the religions are. So communism already happens because everybody is made the same under the dictator that they're following. But it's just that politics is the only place in a climate that becomes more Christian, like the one that swung back is more Christian now, where it's hating on, like now it's hating on sinners, and gay people and pornography and smoking weed and drinking are all like, oh, those are bad things we decided. And like all the leaders are like, it's better to be Christian. Whereas like the world that I was growing up in was much more against the church than this one. And now all of a sudden I'm living in a world that is pro the church, pro Christianity. And it's really just like gayness is hated. Anything that's ridiculous, anybody who would be trying to do something or like make something of themselves, that is what the church doesn't like. Because like Taylor Swift dancing in the music video for Delicate. Is that what the song is? Yeah, I think. It's the song Delicate. Taylor Swift is in a hotel dancing, and she is making herself look foolish or whatever. But this was taped a few years ago when there weren't such pro-Christian sentiments, but where it was easier to be gay. And she's just being gay, but the world is so Christian that they like hate it. Like everybody online is like, look, she looks like a retard. Because this is like a music video that's like Swift fans promote as like this is one of her better moments, because look at how much of a star she is. She's doing this transcendent thing where she's like dancing ridiculously for this music video. And Christian people or people that are just critics will come along and be like, she's just being an idiot, she looks like a retard, when they're completely missing the point that she's doing these ridiculous things on purpose, because it's difficult, even if you're a star, to go and do all this shit on camera, because even for the setting it's embarrassing. Like she knows it's embarrassing to do that. And it's like those things where you're going above and beyond to be ridiculous, go outside of the norms of what somebody would expect you to do, things that might make you look like a retard, or just make you look gay. I mean, that make you look like a retard. These are just things that are ridiculous or gay. But everybody in the world is afraid of being gay, in the sense that they're afraid of doing something that makes you look stupid. Because it's like, if you're doing actions that people aren't used to, then they're going to call you fake. But fake is gay. And gay people are not given the credit of being real, because it's like, you could have gay sex, and that doesn't count. We're not going to like respect you if you have gay sex, you know. That doesn't make you cool. Gay people are not cool. They're like always the losers, because the people who control the story, the people who are popular, are Christians, and they're winners. And it's funny that Christian church is like 55% of the world's wealth is owned by Christians. Like they're the richest people group in the world. And besides maybe some other thing like BlackRock or whatever, I don't know. I mean, like, richest religion in the world by light years, or the second over Islam, and but it's not like all Christians are rich. So there's poor Christians, and there's like poverty, and I'm not for everyone, and somebody should just tell me that. But let me finish this point I'm making about Christianity. Is like you have mega churches, and they practice this more like watered down Christianity just because they're more open minded. They're more open to lots of people. Like a big church will allow lots of people in, and they preach more of a like positive feeling Christianity. But then you have small churches that hold to like stricter fundamentalist Christianity, and those churches are poor. But those churches are poor. They're always like poor church. This poor church, like they're always down on their luck, but it's like Christians in any level of richness, however much money they have, they're always talking about how oppressive it is to be a Christian, that the world is oppressing them for their beliefs and how bad things are. But it's funny that like for a small church, that sadness is real, and they're always just like a poor church, like down on their luck, like they're the real victims, the fundamentalist tiny churches that don't have money, like Christians that don't have money. The sadness is real for them, the sadness and the oppression or whatever. But then you have mega churches that like sing about and talk about how oppressed they are all the time, like they're the victims. But for them, it's all just like this wishy-washy bullshit, because those are the people who go to mega churches are like have all the money and are beautiful and have beautiful families and whatever, and they're really like just hyper communities, because it's like if you're rich, you have a family, why wouldn't you go to church? Because it's this extra opportunity for your kids to socialize in a hyper community with other rich people, where it's like all the best people moving forward into the future are like going to church or whatever at mega churches that have all the money. But it's funny how like they all still have to act like they're worse off than the world, where it's like people in the world have a much more difficult time of it, because they're going to be criticized for being gay if they have a hustle, especially in a more Christian climate. Like having a hustle is always gay, is what I'm saying. Doing something like, oh, I'm the water power washer guy, or whatever. Like any hustle that isn't part of a major religion is always gayer than the religion. And I'm saying like the more decorated shit, like dressing it up in more colors to identify yourself, having your identity be outside the church is so much more difficult. It's more individualistic, and that is liable to be criticized as gay, according to the church, who has the most people and the most money to tell you you're gay, to tell whoever is gay that they're gay. They have the power to do that because of the power narrative. It's like performing is gay. Getting up on a stage outside of the church is gay, because like you can get up on a stage in a church and that's like decidedly not gay. According to it's not gay to sing to Jesus, but only because Christianity is the most popular religion in the world, so they have a lot of people on their side, and they don't like the negative feelings of being called gay. I don't know that gay people even do want to be called gay, but it's just like it's a group decided on by Christians or whatever. Christians never are always free from worry of being called gay. Isn't that something? They don't have to be gay or straight or whatever it is. But, I mean, they're just like, well, I'm a Christian, so I'm always good on that front. Or, like, you wouldn't have to, I don't know. You're just protected from judgment if you're in the Christian church. Judgment of any kind. You're protected from those judgments. You're protected from criticism in the church because you're a part of this really big gang that will protect you from the people trying to disrespect you. And as a result, that really big gang is really condescending to the rest of the world. That's why they are able to sell to the people who aren't part of the gang that those people are sinners. They're not sinners, they just have less money. They're just susceptible to systemic poverty. because they're not part of a giant commune that collects a bunch of money and looks out for everybody who's part of the commune. But if you're out in the world, you're not defining yourself by the church. You're going to have to come up with your own hustle, and you're going to have to try to make it so that hustle doesn't look gay, because the church will call you gay, and then you won't have any status. But it's like people should have just told me, like, you're, like, I try to make it work for myself, but I don't really get it, or, I just, like, I'm not very good at following the rules. I'm not very good at following the rules. There's always a rule that trips me up where it's like I miss out on something important because I fucked up on the rule, and then I'm, like, at the other end of it, like, disappointed in myself for not following the rule. There's always, like, a rule that somebody has. There's, like, I knew about the rule, I just didn't take it seriously enough. So I thought, like, it was real. A lot of rules, it's like I'm just surprised when somebody actually cares about enforcing it. And I should follow the rules better, and it's like, the rule will penalize me, and then I'll be like, okay, that's not happening again, and sometimes it doesn't ever happen again or whatever. Like, I try to change based on the rules. It's just that there's so many different individual ones that it's like there will be a new rule that I have to experience once before I realize that that's what the rule is. But it's like, because I would learn by experience, I don't really, it's only until I experience the penalty of the rule that I realize, oh, they were taking that rule seriously. And that's how I figure out which rules are serious, is that I test a lot of them. And it's just because so many of the rules nobody takes seriously, and it's hard to figure it out because of how bullshit people are on their rules. But then somebody will take a rule seriously. And so I just kind of have trouble following the rules. But, and that's what causes me to not have a big Twitter audience, or have a big audience on here, is because I'm not, like, following the social rules the right way. Like, not taking rules seriously. Or I'll tell people, I'll send out a tweet that's like, waiting for my blue check mark to come in so I can post something. Just because I'm, like, testing this rule that it's uncool to have a check mark or be proud of it. There's this cultural thing, this social thing where it's like, well, you're not supposed to be proud of your blue check mark. You're, like, if you have it, that's almost supposed to be embarrassing for you, especially if you don't already have a big audience or whatever. And so I'm just kind of testing that social rule. And I'll still, like, lose a follower or two when I post that, just because I broke a rule, and people will be like, oh, this person isn't in the know about the rule. But it's like, I just don't like the rule. I just don't follow the rule. But I have trouble following the rules, and that makes it's just like I'm not part of the upper class of people that are successful because they follow the rules. You're successful if you follow the rules and follow the moral systems of society. And I'm not rich like them in terms of followers or necessarily in terms of money, because I was born, like, I'm part of a shittier gene pool, you know. And people should just tell me that to begin with. Like, well, you were born in the lower middle class, and so you have trouble following the rules of the system. You're not going to be popular the way rich people are, because rich people are that way because of their generations of people that are able to follow the rules or whatever. Like, people that are part of lower classes are people that are bad at following the rules. And so somebody should have told me, like, oh, you're never going to make it, you know. There's a cap on what you can do just because you're from the lower middle class, you're from a shitty gene pool that I'm just saying more dialogue about this. Why don't people say that? People are so afraid of mentioning money, classism. That's why Titanic was such a popular, just a blockbuster of a movie if you do it right, because it's a tale about classism, and most people aren't that's just never being exploited. Even like this is the biggest or most like artistic movies ever are usually not talking about classism. But just in the same way that people aren't willing to divulge how much money they make, especially the richer that you are. But if you're lower classes of society are more susceptible to criticism. It's not just like systemic poverty. Well, it's like people say systemic racism, but they're talking about systemic poverty. And systemic poverty, like they're talking about how people are poor systemically, generation after generation, stuck in the same places because they can't get enough money to rise out of it because the system is rigged against them because they're already poor to begin with, and then the system isn't going to help you get out of that. It'll probably result in you being poor again for another generation or whatever. It's systemic poverty. And then people like to say that that's the same thing as racism just to marginalize poor white people or whatever. Just to make it so that poor white people are even worse off because now they're not, you don't get to be the victims. Not that I ever was like a poor white person. It's just that like people should be more informative to me about like people should talk about what your class means or it's like what that might imply for you. Or what might result. There just should be more of a dialogue about like if you're born poorer, then people are just naturally not going to flock to your ideas just because of they have a lower middle class stank all over them. There's like people will be like, oh, this is one of those somebody who is not following the rules, or like I mean, I'm just saying, more speech should be given to that. I guess that's what people talk about. We need more of a dialogue for the systemic racism. But I'm saying, like, systemic poverty is a more interesting idea because just classism, I think, is more interesting to me than racism. But classism is more interesting than racism, but people in lower classes are just like, it's the criticism that makes it worse for people who have systemic poverty. People in lower classes are more given over to criticism, or something like that, where it's like criticism is always the answer. You have protection from criticism if you go to the church. But, like, it's just a poor person's attitude to criticize often. But I guess I don't know what kind of criticism I'm talking about. It's just like the idea that roasting people is good or better than encouraging them. I think that it's like the Christian world puts people in the world at odds with themselves. But, like, I don't know. Christians just operate at a high level of criticism. That is, it's like it's understood that Christians get to be critical of you because they're the people who decide who the sinners are. For sure. But I realized that Christians are always just critical. About a year ago, and about that time, all the Christian people that know me got angry at me because I realized that all they want to do is criticize me. I can't exactly describe what that means. It's just that now I know that all that you ever do in the Christian church is condescend towards your fellow man to keep them within that closed-off society. To keep people in the commune, and that's the way that communism works. In order for everybody to be evened out, you have to criticize the individuality out of people. And so it's because I had an epiphany. And it's not, also I know that I'm right. I know exactly how it is. I know that Christians they operate at this criticism level. It's just that they would espouse this lie that they are above criticism. But it's like there's a ceiling on what they do. They do operate at a higher level in terms of like less criticism than poor the poor in society that don't make an attempt at organized religion to better their life, because like somebody who's really poor, the Christian church could make you better, because it's so classless and it sees all classes as the same. It's probably, I mean, if you're poor, the Christian church is probably a good place for you to go, but because I think, but still there's a cap on Christians' level of criticism. They make it so that they're the people that get to be above everybody else in terms of criticism, condescending, because they own judgments and they worship the best God, the guy that we've named all of time after. It's like undisputable, or whatever. They get to be condescending to whoever they want, typically. So what I'm doing is really outside of the norm to say that, you know what, I realize that everybody in the Christian church criticizes too often. This is like a very rich person's attitude that I have. It's like super progressive, where I'm like, I would never even listen to a Christian person even once, because every word out of their mouth every time is criticism. So it makes me really against Christians. And so like when I come up with a definition for it, what am I supposed to do at that point? But I'm so institutionalized to the Christian church that it's like I still probably will have to join them, because that's all that my life was. So, because like my life was set up for me to just be Christian and think that I was going to heaven the entire time. And so it's like, it sounds really cynical when I just reduce it to that, like, well, every Christian is just a criticizer. Whenever they talk to me, they're just criticizing me. But it's like, whoops, sorry that I found out the truth. I don't know. I was gonna try to make more out of that. The world has turned Christian, or whatever. You see it online. I guess it's hard to describe. It's just like the overarching mentality. But I'm just describing how literalism takes over, or you have to be real, because we have no tolerance for fakeness or nonsense or theories. Because when I was doing identity, the world was open to theories, and I felt comfortable talking about all of it. But now I'm doing this podcast, and all I want to do is talk about Christianity, because those are the folks that are making the world turn against people like me, calling me fake, calling it nonsensical. It's not nonsensical, it's just untrue in comparison to Christianity, in comparison to the literal, that the world is literally under Christ's, literally plays out in comparison to Christ because of his timeline, because it's 2024 years of him being alive, and he's the best human ever. The world literally plays out, it transpires in comparison to Christ all the time, and that is what's true about the world. That's what's real. And so when Christians become more in power, it's this literalist thing where it's like, well, you're not... the words you're saying are all always to be taken literally, and if you're being sarcastic, you're just being a clown or something. Because literally what's true realistically, as far as titles are concerned, the words, as far as titles are concerned, it's all under the title of Christ, including the name that you were born as, and that is, you're just a lesser form of Jesus Christ unless you did something really powerful, really miraculous, you know. And it's like everybody is just everybody's attempt at power or whatever, like Joe Rogan, the people that make it the biggest in this world as worldly figures, those are all just threats to the legacy of Jesus. And it's really, everybody is just attempting to be the Antichrist. But they don't know that. Nobody would say it that way. But but Christians have it that the Antichrist has to be this guy that performs miracles, and then all of these very supernatural things have to happen once he is around, and he has to meet all of these criteria of being this evil, and he has to like rise back from the dead at some point, or whatever it says in Revelation. And Revelation is all just like fictionalized, decorated bullshit. In reality, it's just a fictional book that somebody wrote, and then they slapped it onto the end of the Bible at some point, because they're like, this will be a good ending for this story that'll trap the world in always worshiping Christ or whatever. I mean, the people that are already promoting Christ, a perfect ending to the story that it is that Jesus Christ will come back in the future at some point, only when there's an Antichrist or whatever. But it's very difficult to be the Antichrist as far as the way that Christians narrate it, because that's an impossible fictionalized story is the way that Antichrist comes about. So nobody is ever the Antichrist, and as long as that's the case, Christians will always get to say that their story is more, they'll always get to hold their story over people. But it's really like if the Antichrist came around, then that's somebody calling Christianity on their bluff, where it's like, well, if there's an Antichrist, then all of this is... if there's somebody that people actually believe was the Antichrist, then all of the Christ worshipping would have to answer to that. I mean, if there's an Antichrist, it would really accelerate the story of Christianity, because it's like, Christians, what are you talking about ever? You know, everybody in the world who has a hustle that's like a celebrity or a comedian, like Louis C.K., what is he talking about ever? That's a knock that you could have on anybody in the world. Like, what's their story? What are you saying, actually? When Taylor Swift does this dance for the Delicate music video, it's like, yeah, that's great, or whatever. She did this dance, and it looks ridiculous. And people criticize it and being like, but what's she actually doing? What's she actually saying? Like, she has all this power and influence now. She became a billionaire. But people will be like, who the fuck cares? Because she's... what's she actually saying? But it's really like, Christians, what are you saying ever? What is any pastor of any church saying? It's like, nothing. On with the story, on with the show, you know? So now what? What is it, Christianity? But the thing is that they've convinced everybody that they do have a thing that they're ultimately talking about in the end, because they are hinging it on this shit that happens in Revelation. They're hinging it on, well, Jesus will come back, even though it's been 2,000 years and no trace of him. They're able to get by saying, we do have an ending unlike everybody else. This is part of what makes them so powerful. It's like, we do have an ending to our story. There is something we're talking about at the end, even though they never have to prove it. That Jesus doesn't ever have to come back, and people still believe them just because they have a lot of people in their religion. It's like, what are you ever talking about, Christians? Like, what's the fucking point? Like, yeah, Jesus was the best ever and whatever. So now what? On with the show. What the fuck next? And they're like, well, what's next is Antichrist, and then we'll talk to you. Nobody's ever that Antichrist, because and if an Antichrist came around, he wouldn't be doing all of those things in Revelation, because that's fucking impossible. The same as whatever Jesus did is totally propagandized, because it's just his closest followers that were trying to paint the best picture possible for him and make it believable, make him look good. The same way as any civilization, any ruler ever in history, the history books from that empire propagandize them to be the greatest ever. Share all of these lies about it that are like proven to be untrue historically. Like, they talk about him in the greatest terms ever. It's just that Jews are able to do it in a more believable way, and that's why they're more powerful, is because the story they write is more realistic than other stories. And so it becomes believable to the point that people are like, oh, this is real. And their name is Israel. And it's like to the point that they're so good that they were able to make it so that their name, as translated in English, the most popular language in the world, like in the future, would be Israel. And what people do in response to that is say, that means nothing, of course. That means nothing that their name literally is real in English. And they're the people that put out the most realistic, relatable stories, and as a result of putting out those stories, they become the most powerful tradition and culture in the world. And they are considered to be more real than other cultures everywhere, and that's why they get protections from the UN and from America. And Palestine doesn't. Palestine doesn't even get recognized as a country. Israel gets recognized as his country. So much more than Palestine, and that to the point that they're at liberty to genocide Palestine, because Palestine is so seen as not real by the world. as far as the world upholds it. But it's like, it's weird how much more real that Israel is treated, but Israelites would just generally get to walk around this way with a superiority complex, of course, because they have proven to the world that they have the most believable stories. The Bible, the most sold book in the world, or whatever, and whatever you like wouldn't be on board with me necessarily that the Bible runs the world or whatever. This is a belief that I have, but their name is Israel, and the response to that is like, well, you're fucking crazy. You think that actually means something? That means they are real. But it's also like they are the most real as far as we define real and fake because of their story is real. People treat their God to be real, the most in the world, and especially in comparison to like Palestine's God. Just given that so like what's fake and what's real? It's just like they don't live in the real world. They have more power and Jews are part of this powerful religion and culture that protects them from judgments and from bad things happening to them. Or they don't have to live in the real world they don't have to live in the world so much that they don't have to deal with hate at all. People in the real world that are part of lower classes or whatever have worse jobs. They're always mudslinging or whatever. They're always like down in the mud. They have to deal with fights and they have to deal with other lower class people that are given over to fighting or whatever, or just more verbal abuse, more criticism, hate. People who don't have money are much more have to deal with so much more hate. It's just like the real world actually is when you don't have money to afford whatever. It's like that's when things get very real. It's like life is more real for fundamentalist Baptist churches that don't have any money, and it's like it's more evil, the shit that goes on in those. But Jews escape hate. They tell people they're allowed to not even be hated. Unlike what pretty much every other culture has to do. Every culture that is less real than them, which is every culture, has to deal with more hatred than them. Israel is treated as real or whatever. Like, they're so real that they don't... it's just like the richer you get is the less susceptible you will be to criticism. The more protections you have against it, is what I'm saying. But it's interesting that they are called Israel. And they're like, you can't hate us. That's anti-Semitism. They come up with a word for the people that hate them. Christians do it too. It's called anti-Christianity. But that one's you so much can't hate Christians. Like, they have so much power, I would argue more power than Jews, that people are afraid to even say the word anti-Christian, whatever, say that exists. But you're especially not allowed to have anti-Christian shit. But Jews are like, no, that's anti-Semitism. Because we don't deal with hate because we're the most real group of people in the world. That's naturally what comes about, is like, you can't hate the most real people ever. There's a word for that. And it makes you this evil sinner type thing, an anti-Semite. Where there's a lot of it's like, I'm a Semite, for being circumcised, being from the seed of Abraham, who is from the seed of Shem, that the term Semite comes from. How could I be an anti-Semite if I am a Semite? Like, I can hate the Jews all I want. It's what I figured out, which is completely true. You can't tell me that I'm an anti-Semite ever in real life, and for what is actually real. It's just that there's this disguise of realness that's cast over the world through the Bible and through Jews, and it has to do with... but it's like that Israel is treated as when you're treated as real, like treated with respect, the way that Jews have been. I know the Holocaust, whatever. The Holocaust is just a result of, I don't know, just German angst. I couldn't tell you what that's about, but, you can dislike the Jews without killing them, You can dislike the Christians without wanting to kill them. So like Christians will be like, when the Antichrist comes, he'll be killing millions of Christians. It's like if the Antichrist came around and he's like, I'm not going to kill any Christians, I just want to be the Antichrist. Christians would hate that. They'd be like, we want the Antichrist that's going to kill a bunch of us. You know? And whoever was the Antichrist, they wouldn't believe it, no matter what. That's a guarantee. They will deny it. The same way that the Jews denied Christ, Christians will deny the Antichrist when the Antichrist comes. And there will be one. And, because Christians have these high standards for the Antichrist that no fucking person will ever meet. And that's how they get away always saying, well, the Antichrist will be here eventually. Because the second there's an Antichrist is the era that we're not in the Christ era anymore. But, it's just like Christians, what are they ever saying? Pastors of churches, there's a viral clip going around of a pastor who was saying politics is evil, but he's like getting up in front of his congregation. He's like, his mantra during his sermon that he's giving, this is like a viral clip. His mantra is that politics is not a part of the church or whatever, like this argument about Christian nationalism. And he's like decidedly against politics. He's like, that should not be your thing. It should only be about Jesus Christ. Politics is evil. That shouldn't be a big influencer in your life because that's taking you away from Christ or whatever. This pastor gets up and he has this opinion, you know, and that's all that pastors are ever doing, is that they're getting angry about something. They're just giving you hot takes. And to pose it as if like, I've got a secret. I know something that you don't know. The only thing that pastors are ever doing is posing to their congregation, acting that they know something that the congregation doesn't know. And so it's really, if you're a good pastor, you're just passionate about your own beliefs or whatever, to share them in a passionate way that makes it that people believe that you know something they don't. And pastors are just giving hot takes all the time. They're not saying anything. They're just pretending like they know something that other people don't, because they don't have the authority to do that. They don't have authority over politics. They're not like in the world being a politician. There's this other clip of John MacArthur going around that he's saying Christians are getting angry at. So they're like, well, I can't go on and be happy now that John MacArthur said this. John MacArthur was saying to some group of people that OCD doesn't exist, ADHD doesn't exist, PTSD doesn't exist, or whatever. And Christians are like, no, mental health is real. I guess what makes you good at your job as a pastor is if you convince yourself that you are called by God enough to like issue bullshit statements in a way that it's like, oh, this is real because God is speaking through me or whatever. Because it's not like John MacArthur has any authority over mental health and he's not a psychiatrist, but it's like, that's what pastors have to do all the time. They have to temporarily act like, well, they just have these opinions. Same as usually what I do on this podcast. The difference between me and a pastor, though, is that I don't claim that it's ordained by God. I claim that I'm an idiot, that it's all just coming from me. What I speak to you, what's speaking through me are just angels and demons, like evil and good spirits, you know? That's what's speaking through me. It's all on me. I'm God, you know? And so I'm not going to say I'm called by God. That's the difference between me and a pastor. You already know up front that it's bullshit. Pastors will tell you this is the most supreme, transcendent knowledge that you'll ever be able to find. It's not from an idiot. It's from God. It's from God speaking through me. But like in the sense that I say that I'm God, I'm saying like I'm this lesser individual God, same as all humans are gods. Individually to themselves, they just represent different things based on their characteristics or what they're titled. I'm a human, obviously. I'm not, I don't have this divine knowledge. I have a very flawed, fallible knowledge. It doesn't come from God. It just comes from, like, whatever thoughts that I have at the time. But, like, a pastor of a church, John MacArthur is not saying anything, ever. So there's not any reason to get mad at him when he's just being a pastor. So, I don't know. I would have to have some superiority complex that would make it that I'll be like, look, I know that Christians are all critical, and I'm less critical than them. I mean, it's just like, it's about being at a higher level of criticism where you can condescend to everybody. Christians typically they tell everybody, like, well, so many people believe in this, you have to listen to our version of criticism. You don't get to come up with your own, especially when, literally speaking, we've defined you to be lesser in comparison to Christ just by giving you a first and last Jesus Christ type of name, and you're going to live and die within the entire timeline of him, and you're already subsumed by his character no matter what you do, and your beliefs are already worthless bullshit. But we'll also tell you that beliefs are very respected in this world, just to lie to you, just to continue to condescend to you. I mean, it's all just a bunch of lies and fucking bullshit from this gay ass fucking world. So like, that makes it so that you don't have a chance right from the beginning. But it's like, I understand the value of it, because the world is not going to become not Christian in my lifetime. So it's like, it's probably better that somebody made it that I could be relatable to the inevitably Christian story that will develop during my entire lifetime. It's all just different chapters of the Jesus era. It's just that, like, the world is fucked as far as beliefs are concerned. They don't care about ideas or concepts that you have to offer. They just care about Judaism and Christianity ultimately, and that's why an entire race, culture, people can get genocided, and the popular sentiment across the world will end up being, well, those people getting genocided deserved it, because they're like, why is it? That's what people don't have an answer for, and that's why they just keep protesting. Like, but free Palestine, because aren't we supposed to treat this as bad, that Israel is just bombing them needlessly, especially when Palestine has less power than them, and they're just like, it would be like people beating their dog or something, you know? Not to be crass, not to call like Palestinians dogs or whatever. It's just like, Palestine is already more victimized, that you're going to go and treat the oppressed as worse. You're going to go out of your way to do that. You already have the most power. All three of the presidential candidates are pro-Israel: Biden, Trump, and JFK. You know, all the people that you can vote for are going to be pro-Israel. It's a pro-Israel nation, and we're the most influential nation in the world. But just to reiterate, the church tells people in the church, they make this as vague as possible on purpose, just to distract people from the fact that the Abrahamic covenant is just, if you're circumcised, you're a Jew. And so there's no separation between church and state, because the state influences, for very many years, all of these families to make their kids Jewish immediately when their kids aren't Jewish, you know. And also, this is a secret. You're not, this isn't known by anybody, that when you're circumcised, you're a Jew. But it's like, this alone is enough to make everybody in the world riot. That they're doing this very invasive, personal thing of making you a Jew day one, when this is like a belief system. And at the same time, they'll be the first people to tell you, don't infringe on people's beliefs. You can't be an anti-Semite. You can't throw any hate at a belief system. They'll be the first people to tell you that, but also they're the people making it so that they're the people disrespecting your beliefs right out of the gate, to the point of like, well, you will always be part of this belief system because you on your own just fucking blow. Your ability to come up with concepts during the course of your life will just be shitty in comparison to the good belief system. Yeah, and you don't believe me that like that's what the Abrahamic covenant is, because the fucking church will tell you it's just about God's promised land, and then they're like be foggy about it after that, and Christians will be like, oh, I don't know about circumcision, whatever. It's like, it's one fucking thing, and the Abrahamic covenant is just so remembered, it's so important. Like, why do people not know about this rule, that you're a Jew when you're circumcised? So it's like, what the fuck am I... And now that I know this, now that I know that that's true, you can't stop me from hating the Jews. I'm a Semite. Fuck the Jews forever. They're fucking idiots. Cunts. Fucking stomp all over anybody's belief system. As far as this world is concerned, that's what the world is about. At least for a large number of people, they don't circumcise in Europe as much as they do in America, because Europe is less Christian than America. And Christians and Jews are forever entwined because of the Bible. Because the Bible, the New Testament makes it, the New Testament and Old Testament combined is the Christian Bible, but the Old Testament is the Jewish Bible. But they both worship that as this is the doctrine for and the basis for their religion. That's like, the world plays out to destroy your beliefs. And it's mostly initiated by, like, Jews. Anyway, I thank you for listening to that, and I like it. I like that, and that's great. Thank you very much. More of this in the future, maybe less of it. I don't know. Hopefully this stops. Hopefully I will, hopefully I can find peace in my life that doesn't involve me pursuing having tons of hatred towards religion or whatever. It's not like I want to die alone like Jim Jones, but Jim Jones is the greatest pastor of all time. No pastor is ever going to do it better than Jim Jones. That's another funny thing about it, is that every pastor is just espousing nothing but bullshit. Jim Jones is the one who's like, you know what, we're going to take this to the next level, we're all just going to die. He's the one most remembered for that. But he's a pastor, That's what's funny about Jim Jones. It's like he's trolling every pastor that's ever lived by he's also a pastor, and like in some senses he's also a pastor of a church. Like, churches are but no church will ever be more memorable than Jim Jones. No pastor will ever be more memorable than Jim Jones, when every pastor is in the business of, like, I'm going to grow my church to be the biggest ever. Every pastor is, like, totally narcissistic. It just wants power in numbers. Jim Jones is the most memorable pastor ever. And also, he got 900 people to move to a different continent with him. You try to do that as a pastor, you wouldn't be able to. You don't have that kind of pull. So if you're a pastor, like, the standard is, can you bullshit to the level of Jim Jones, where can you bullshit to the level of getting 900 people to kill themselves with you? Is your preaching so good that people would just, like, die just to be part of your church forever? No pastor can say that they are as good as Jim Jones in that respect. Their preaching is not that convincing. Show me a pastor whose preaching was more convincing than Jim Jones. You won't be able to. Not even once. Anyways, thank you very much. Bye for now.